Well, that was in the water, and what can I say? I have to say that it does feel like there's something in the water. I'm not sure if it's just me or if I'm just imagining things, but it feels like there's something in the water. Maybe it's as we're getting closer to Easter, we're all sort of on a little bit of a wind down. Perhaps it's the end of summer kick is what I call it. Those long, not long, but warmer days that have kind of been hitting us over the last week or so. Maybe it's just that last little bit that we're ready to move on to the next thing. I'm not sure, but it does feel like there is something in the water. So that was a good place for us to start this morning. Let me introduce myself. I am Linda Jones, your Sunday morning host here at Rhema CC, and I do love working with each of the guys at Rhema. I think we are such a lucky and blessed team. I just think there's some awesome things happening at this radio station, and for those of you who support us in that, I just want to say again, thank you for doing what you do, whether that's through prayer, whether it's through financial contributions, whether it's just getting behind the events that are organised, like the movie nights. We love that you are a part of our community, and I just want to say again, thank you for playing your part in that. We hope to be able to get you involved even more. And if you have areas of interest, by all means, that you think would be something you'd love to get involved in. If there's things happening here that you want to get involved in, absolutely, we'd love to have you on board. Just get in touch with us and let us know what you're thinking, and we can be praying over those thoughts and work out what sort of direction you guys and we can do together. It'd be really cool to bring our communities and just sort of evolve it even more. Oakley dokley, that's a bit of a spin in the wrong direction of where I was actually going this morning, but that's all right. We are this morning following up on last week's sort of, I guess it's sort of lead up to Easter, and we last week we covered forgiveness and just the importance of forgiveness and just how powerful it actually is to forgive. I don't think we really can grasp what forgiveness is until we've been forgiven, until there's stuff there that we can kind of recognise that we've played a role in, or things that we've made, or decisions that we've made, and we've come before God and gone, you know what, I've made a mess of this. I actually saw a little meme thing the other day. It was talking about, I don't know the actual wording, but it was along the lines of religion is when I go to I go to my dad and I have to, I don't know how it was actually worded, but it's along the lines of, oh no, I've got to tell my dad this. And Christianity or the faith, the Christian like lifestyle is actually more along the lines of going to your dad or my dad and saying, oh daddy, I need you. And I think that's the key is when it comes to forgiveness, reminding ourselves that we have a loving God who, there's consequences for the things that we do, but he doesn't want us to stay in that. He wants us to just sit with him and just work on things together with him. And I think that's just such a beautiful gift to us, and we have so much to be thankful for. So on the subject of gift, I'm going to start with it's actually a passage, and it's the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, this is actually one of my favourite passages of the whole Bible. And I know not too many people would probably think that that's a wonderful place to start, but I just think it's a really insightful and it's just such a powerful scene in understanding who Jesus was and just how much we can grasp from that one particular scene in terms of understanding who he was, who he is, and who we are called to be. So I'm going to read it to you this morning just so we can kick things off. And then as with the morning evolves, we'll discuss it a little bit more in detail. So I'm going to start with Matthew 26, 36 to 46. And yes, there is a lot of sixes in there. But this is basically, it's just kind of just to give you an idea of context of where we're going today. So starting from 36, then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Going a little farther, or I would say further, but that's my Aussie lingo, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away, unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Now, I love this passage. I love it for all the reasons that we are just given so much insight into the humbleness and the servant-like heart that Jesus displayed. And we are going to get into that a lot further as we go this morning. Yeah, I love it. And I'm looking forward to exploring it with you guys. So stay with me this morning. Stay with us here at Rhema CC, and we are going to look at this a little bit deeper and sort of explore things for what they really are. We're back shortly. See you guys. That was Broken People by Johnny Diaz. I am Lindy Jones, your Sunday morning host. Welcome, 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 welcome. It is awesome to have you guys here. Thank you for being a part of our day. What can I say? We are indeed broken people, and thankfully we have a God who is not broken, and actually he restores us better than we could ever fully comprehend, and I'm so thankful that we do. So thank you, God, for loving us enough to put that time and energy into just sticky taping us together with the most powerful sticky tapes of all, and the super glue that no one else in this whole world can possibly do. I just thank you that you are a God who loves us, who protects us, who puts us together and restores us, because we are well and truly the broken people that we often don't want to admit that we are. Right, now this morning we're actually talking the Garden of Gethsemane. And I spoke this morning I actually read through the passage, Matthew 26, 36 to 46, and that is looking into the story or the scene of Jesus being in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, I mentioned before that I actually love this passage, and I don't think I've had too many people stop and look at me like, yeah, I get that when I say that, but I really do love this passage. In fact, I actually started to write a book on it probably about 15, 20 years ago. And it may be something I go back to at some point. I don't know. We'll see. But I really do love that in this one scene we understand the human part of who Jesus was in terms of his anguish, his emotion, his ability to feel. So in verse 38 we actually see the words, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." He's pleading with Peter and Zebedee's two sons. He doesn't want to do it alone. He doesn't want to face what he is facing alone. And he's asking for that support. He's asking for them to be with him. Now, how about you? Have you ever had a time in your life where you think, I am going through this, I just need someone to be with me? And yet you look around and it feels like there's just no one. There is no one sitting through the hardship of what is about to happen in your life. I think if we sit on that for a minute, if we just think about that, if we contemplate those moments in your life that have been overwhelming, that have been lonely, have been just an overwhelming sense of anxiety because you've got to carry the load alone. That's the kind of emotion that we're seeing here. It's the pleading of Jesus, My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. This is killing me. This is what he's saying. This is killing me. I'm terrified. I know what's going to come, and I want you just to be here with me. Just stick it out. And then Jesus goes to his dad, which is our dad. "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." So we have this contrast of emotions going on here. We have this deep sorrow and despair, this discomfort, this pleading, I don't want to do this on my own, please be with me. I need some assurance that I've got you guys here with me. And then this surrender. I don't want to go this way. I don't want to do things this way. But if it's your will, then we'll go that way. I guess that's what we have to do. Now, Jesus actually spoke, he said this, he kind of played with God, I think 3 times. Let me just double check that. I'm pretty sure it's actually 3, second time, third time. So he left them and went, sorry, I'm just flicking through the verses myself while I'm talking to you. He went away a second time and prayed, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away, unless I drink it, may your will be done. So we're going the third time. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Yes, it does say here in verse 44. Sorry, my apologies. I'm just flicking through I'm actually exploring this as I'm talking to you guys. So 44, so he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. 3 times he pleaded with God, if we can do this any other way, let's do that. Let's go that way. I don't want to do it this way. Can we just find some other option? So I'm going to ask you guys just now, if you happen to be listening, are there things there that you are battling with? Is there anything in your life at the moment? Or maybe there's been times in your life that you've really battled with a calling where you just feel like, I know I'm being asked to do this, but I just don't want to. I just don't want to, God. Let's do it a different way. A few things for you to think about between now and when I come back. I should be back at about 8:15. When I come back, we're going to talk a lot more about this, actually. We're going to talk about those few different angles, the emotion that Jesus is exposing as he gets closer to knowing that the time is coming where he's going to have to face the most horrific situation that he was, sadly and gratefully for us, designed for. And but also just looking at, that humanistic... I guess you could say just the need to just ask for any other option, that spiritual yearning to know God and to know that whatever happens is between us and him, but also just that pleading, that pleading. Come on, God, let's do things a different way. So when we come back a little bit later, I'm going to dig even further into these sort of concepts this morning and challenge. Let's get challenged by it, all of us. Let's get uncomfortable. All right, I'll see you guys in a little bit. And a big hi-de-ho to you guys. That was Look What You've Done by Tasha Layton. And there's plenty to look at what we've been exposed to, what God has given us and what he's done, what he continues to do. And actually, that's a good place for us to kind of explore from at this very second, actually. Before we get started, though, I just want to remind you guys, at 8:30 we have a New Beginning with Greg Laurie. If I can say his name, that would be even better. I'm having a bit of a shocker this morning, but that's all right. Can't have everything, can we? We can only do so much. Anyway, we'll try and get back on track. So 8:30, Greg Laurie. Hope you can stick around for that one. He's always great to sort of tune into and just get a feel for. He's always talking about some pretty awesome stuff and very relevant. Always good to kind of get a bit of insight. I actually really love the different programs that I can hear, that we get exposed to here on Rhema CC. I think it's awesome that we get so much just, within really just a flick of either clicking onto an app or onto a website. It's just amazing how instant we have that available to us. What a time to live, hey? What a time to live. I sound like an old person right now, but that's okay because I'm probably getting old, so that fits quite well. All right, today we're talking a little bit of a flow on from last week. So we're talking, as we've been leading up to Easter, we're talking different themes along the lines of the Easter build-up. This morning we're talking about the Garden of Gethsemane. I have mentioned a couple of times now that I do love this passage. We are looking specifically at Matthew 26, 36 to 46. And that is a tongue twister if you try and say it really fast. 36, 46, blah, 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 anyway, whatever else. I was sort of just dancing around 2 main concepts this morning. So we're looking at just the humanistic emotion that Jesus exposes us to in that moment. I looked at that a little bit previously this morning, and I also sort of looked at the other side of this passage, if you like, of the whole idea of submission to God anyway. In this particular little segment this morning, we're going to talk more about the emotion that Jesus exposes us to, and just the fact that he is so human in this moment in terms of how he feels, the things that he's overwhelmed by. Let me ask you if there's been anything in your life that you are just in absolute dread of. You know something's coming. Maybe it's surgery. Maybe it's an exam that's coming up. Maybe it's wondering whether or not the marriage is going to be holding together. Maybe it's a case of, am I going to meet that baby I want to meet? That fear and that frustration and that overwhelming sense of, is this going to come through with me? I don't know, or for me, I should say. Is this going to work out? What's this going to look like? Am I going to have to grieve this? What's involved in that? Now, this is the kind of thing that I get from the words that I read that Jesus said. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Now he's asking in particular in this particular setting, he's speaking to Peter and Zebedee's two sons, and that's who he's talking to, and he's basically saying, I don't want to do this on my own, please just be here with me. He's very human in this moment. We see how raw and how real those emotions are. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. There's something in that for us. There really is something for us to be able to grasp and understand. We look at how the whole Easter story unfolded, and we're going to talk deeper again shortly down the track. Obviously, we are looking at the reality that Jesus was crucified. He knew it was coming. He knew it was going to be awful. He knew that he was going to be betrayed by the people that he loved most. And maybe that's something that you're facing at the moment. Maybe there's people in your life who are betraying you or your trust, or, maybe there's things that they are doing that are leaving you burdened. Maybe there's stuff coming up that's going to be too heavy or feels like it's just too much. But when we look at the story of Easter, now that is a promise that God has made us, that he really does bring all the things that are designed to harm us and to bring us down. And he uses that to flip it, to bring it to good. If it wasn't for Jesus, we wouldn't be able to have a relationship with God. And that's the truth of it. So remember, the emotions are okay. Remember that the emotions are very, very human. They're very, very normal. Jesus exhibited them himself. We see it right here. So whatever you're facing today or whatever you've been facing, if there's some heavy stuff there, look to Jesus in the story of Easter, because his story is not about sorrow. It was awful, some of the stuff that he endured. Terrible, horrific. But it was through that one willingness to just serve anyway that we are now able to have this beautiful, free relationship with God. And I hope and pray you can take that away this morning. I'm going to be back after a little while, guys. Enjoy this song. I'm going to see you soon. I can't even tell you what time because I have no idea. Soon. All right. I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Welcome back, guys. That was Rest for Your Soul by Austin French, and I do hope you guys are having an opportunity today to get an actual rest. I do hope that it's going to fall into place, that you actually get a chance to actually take some time to rest that little soul of yours, and you can spend some time with people that you love, or just simply God himself, just taking some time out just to unwind and enjoy your day and life a little bit more. I think we forget to do that, don't we? We forget to just call time out and actually enjoy the gift of life itself. And what a gift it truly is. So I do hope you're able to do that at some point today. Guys, you're listening to Rhema CC. I'm Linda, your Sunday morning host, and it is a pleasure to be doing Sunday with you. So thank you for having me. And this morning we've actually been talking about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. So I thought as we lead up to Easter, it's kind of important for us to look at different backgrounds, sort of pieces, if you like, of how Jesus ended up where he was, and the insights we can gain from those little glimpses of the things that happened prior to him actually coming to that point of death. Now, last week we talked a little bit about forgiveness and just the importance of forgiveness and how relevant it is to let go of the stuff that we carry around, the things that we either carry around in terms of not forgiving other people or not forgiving ourselves. And there's so much weight in that. And I just urge you guys, if there's some stuff there that you still need to work on, if there's stuff that you need to really hand over to God with, if there's issues that you're carrying in terms of forgiveness, then keep praying through it. Forgiveness is a decision, and we certainly as humans can battle with knowing how to do that. So I just hope and pray you're able to spend some time with God today, just doing that, just working out how to let go of stuff that's holding you captive. But today specifically we're looking at the Garden of Gethsemane, and we're looking at Jesus's response to being there. Now, in this, we were talking a little earlier about the emotion that Jesus experienced in this one setting. You know, we talked about the way he explained it. He says to Peter and to Zebedee's two sons, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." Now that's coming from him, Jesus himself. I'm overwhelmed. I'm just at this point of just deep despair, and I don't want to do this on my own. He actually tells them that he wants them to stay awake with him. He's kind of going, I need to know that I've got people doing this with me. And of course they're not aware of just how crucial this moment is. They've got no idea. So we talked about that a little bit before. We talked about just how big that is, and just the realization that we can identify with emotion itself. You know, emotion is a natural part of who we are as humans. And it's so reassuring to know that Jesus experienced it too. So there's this concept of anyway. I've been sort of weighing this up myself over the last few months, and probably more so in the last month with just different life experiences that we've been through as a family. And that moment in time, you know, guys, there may be stuff that you're praying for at the moment that you just feel like God's not answering. Those deep prayers that you are just leaving with him and just saying, I want you to know this is important to me. I want you to know this is important to me. This is really important to me. And it may feel like there's no answer. There's no response. There's nothing. There's no assurance of peace or calm or things that you just naturally expect will be there. Firstly, I want to say I'm sorry if that's what you feel like you're experiencing. Now, God does hear your prayers, and he does love you. He does hear you. But if we look at this example here, Jesus is actually 3 separate times he goes away and he prays to God. My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. And then again, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. There's this flip in the prayer. There's a prayer of, I really want you to hear me. This is really important to me. But again, I acknowledge that if it's not going to be, I pray that your will be done, that you will be glorified through this, that you'll be known through this, that your plans will surface through this. Sometimes in life we are faced with situations that are like that. Sometimes we don't know what God has in store through the setting or the circumstances. For me, an example is when I was having my seventh baby. So my pregnancies have always been a little bit more intense, but my labours have been fantastic. Number 7 baby, my emotional and psychological health was a mess, and actually to the point where one of the midwives pulled my husband aside and said, look, I'm really concerned about her mental health. I want to give you some resources just in case you need them. And that was prior to me having him. I was at a point where I was just so desperate to follow God's call on our life and do things the right way, and ensure that I brought a beautiful baby into the world, because that was what I was called to do. He'd created this gorgeous little being within me, and even though I wasn't there emotionally or psychologically, my commitment to following his plan for my life and my husband's life and our family's life and ultimately our beautiful little guy meant that there was sacrifice in that. It meant that I had to go through a period of time where I was in deep prayer. I was mortified by what I knew was going to happen. I knew that my body had to go through stuff that I didn't want it to go through again. I knew that it meant change for me. Knew it meant financial change. I knew it meant so many shiftings in our life, and I was already exhausted by the idea of it. So when I had him and I got to the end of the pregnancy and we, went in to have him, I was being induced for him, and I thought, okay, this is the end, and then it wasn't the end, and we ended up in an emergency C-section, and it was my first C-section, so every other labour had been pretty perfect. It was long, they were all very, very long, but there was no real complications other than my fifth baby, but again, she was a little miracle, so that was, and having him and having to go in for the C-section, I went in actually to have him for the induction on the day before everything went into lockdown the first time in 2020, and I had him at 12:06 a.m. on the day that everything went into lockdown. Now, meeting this little boy that I was so reserved about having, and I was fearful of how I would respond to the situation of being a mum again. I was looking at my age and the fact that I was an older mum then, and just even just as dumb things like worrying about what other people thought because I had teenage daughters, and what if they thought this is the mental state that I was in. It was just flowing from one silly thought to another, but that's where I was in that moment. So to have him and then have him amongst this chaos that I wasn't prepared for, it was messy. But when I look at the actions and the heart that God was calling me to in that moment, I was actually probably pleading the same prayer in a lot of ways to what Jesus was in that moment. My soul is overwhelmed. No, that's not what I meant to say. My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. It was that same sort of mentality, that same sort of thinking of, I don't want to do this, I'm exhausted, I don't want to do this, but I know it's coming. But ultimately I'm going to trust you with this. So when we met this little boy at 12:06 a.m. on the day that everything shut down, when the world had turned into darkness, and I see this little tiny baby being lifted up above me, and he was this chubby little thing, this gorgeous chubby little thing, but he looked so much like his brothers. It was just like, oh, there's a replica. And I was exhausted. I was tired from the battle of getting there. But in that one moment of absolute darkness for the world, where it was just, everyone was just consumed with fear, and it was just such a fearful time for everybody else. And yet in my life, I looked up and I saw light. He was the promise of generations to come. He was the promise that the light hadn't gone out. My God had provided that moment in that particular setting. He knew that I didn't want to go through that. And there's probably things in your life that you don't want to go through. But when you don't want to go through it and there's that desperation, He will always leave the light on. My baby is almost 4 years old, and I look at him every day and I just know that His will, my God's will, was done. The moment that we had decided that, it's not about us, it's about His will being done. And this is not about me. This is not about my decisions. This is about Jesus. But I'm just trying to just bring it together from an earthly perspective and just a more of a secular or modern, I guess, understanding of the same principles that we should be driven by. That understanding and that prayer that Jesus exercised and prayed over and over. My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. That sense of anyway. I trust you anyway. I'm going to follow you anyway. You're my God anyway. Guys, I really pray that you get a chance to really grasp that in the next few days. Spend some time getting closer to Jesus as we get closer to Easter. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I'll be back soon. That was Love One Another by Newsboys, and what a big thing to do, love one another, even when we're a bit annoying to each other. I know that my kids like to be reminded of that, or should I say don't like being reminded of that. My two little boys are constantly fighting at the moment. I'm not sure what that's about. It's usually my youngest antagonising the other one. And thankfully number 6 is quite resilient at the moment. He's pretty easygoing, which is not like him at all. So I'm just running with it while I can. But yeah, I certainly remind them to love one another. We got to the point the other day where I stopped both of them. I said, guys, you need to stop. And they both just looked at me. I said, stand up. And they both stood up. And I said, give each other a big cuddle. And of course, that just meant they were just laughing as they hugged each other, and they were giggling as much as they could. And the world was good again. So maybe we should all do that, a bit of that ourselves, I guess. But yeah, definitely important for us to spend some time making sure that we put others before us, and just spend some time just validating each other, and just, just assuring each other that we've got each other's back, because, my goodness, and we live in a world that it's quite happy to shut us down and ignore us and all that stuff. So definitely a good thing for us to get behind each other. Now, I do apologise. Last time I spoke, I was talking a lot, but it just felt like the right thing to do. It felt like the time to really examine where we've been today and sort of tie it together. We've been talking Matthew 26, 36 to 46. If you are just jumping in for the first time this morning, we've been looking at this passage of the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus being in there, and just the exploration of his emotion, and just how natural it is to see his emotion in that. But also we've been talking about that process of letting go and praying through the deep, dark stuff, but being willing to surrender and say, your will be done anyway, regardless of what comes anyway. I'm going to follow you anyway. That theme of I'm putting you first, God, anyway, and being challenged by that this morning. I think it's so important just to really look at who Jesus is in this moment and in this passage, and just process the same behaviours and the same heart and the same attitude that he has processed. I know there's been a lot in it, because it's a heavy one, and it's a big one. It's a great passage for us to be really reminded of so much. And I definitely just want to encourage you guys, if you can take some time today or in the coming days, spend some time, get those Bibles out again. I'm terrible myself. I will completely admit that I lack the commitment to that. I'm constantly praying. I'm a big prayer. I'm always in prayer. I must look like a total loon sometimes when I'm talking to what appears to be myself, but it's actually God. My 4-year-old he's almost 4. My 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, will often say to me, "Who are you talking to, Mummy?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just talking to God." So yeah, I do that, but I have to admit that, and it comes to getting that Bible open, I'm not so committed, and that's probably a bit of a weakness on my part. But hey, that's something that I can be working on, and I hope and pray you're able to do the same thing just this week, even if you can do that. Next week, we're actually going to be looking at another part of the story of Jesus before he actually ended up, at that point of absolute death. And I will examine that a little bit more with you guys then. But yeah, be challenged as we get closer to Easter, guys, and just look at God and just ask him what he is wanting us to see this Easter. Fresh eyes, fresh heart, and a yearning heart to just see what it is that he wants us to be challenged by. I think we can get a little bit mundane with our thinking and get a little bit worn down year after year, but it's so important to be refreshed and be aware of the gift that Jesus gave to us with his servant heart and life. And that's what we should be all sort of striving towards. So I encourage you today, if you can do that, do it. I'm out of here, guys. Have a super duper week, and I will see you next week as we're getting closer again to Easter. All right, have an awesome one, and I'll see you back here next week. Bye, guys.